And yes, it is possible. So today is the first show of the month. And as always, on this first show of the month, I am here to answer your questions. And one of the questions that I get a lot is, how do I stop thinking about food all the time? I'm so sick of thinking about it all the time. So today I'm going to help you stop thinking about food 24/7 because whether you're trying to stick to a diet or struggling with emotional eating or just obsessed with eating right, whatever that is, having food on your mind all the time is exhausting and overwhelming. Not only do you want to stop eating or, emotional eating or binging, you want to stop thinking about food every minute of the day, right? Who can relate? And by the way, if you are listening live to the show on Voice America and you want to talk to me, the number's 866-472-5792. If you are on the Instagram live stream, feel free to just drop a comment or a question in the comment box. So when I was struggling with food, it was the first thing I thought about when I woke up. What was I going to eat? How could I make sure that I was good that day? And it was the last thing I thought of at night. What had I eaten? How many calories? Always calculating. How many calories had I burned? How many calories had I eaten? Was I going to lose weight the next day? Or was I going to gain it? Oh, hi, Renee. Good to see you here on the Instagram live stream. Yay. So food for me was an obsession. And if that sounds familiar to you, then you know that this food focus, it just takes over your life. And you might even avoid social situations because you're worried about what you're going to eat, or you feel self-conscious about eating in front of other people. You think they may be thinking, "Oh, what's she eating? She shouldn't be eating that," or just feeling self-conscious in general. Or maybe you feel guilty and ashamed whenever you have a quote unquote forbidden food. And over time, your whole world can seem to revolve around what you're eating or not eating. So, how to stop? How to stop the madness? That's what we're going to talk about today. So, first, remember that food issues are not about willpower, control, or addiction. No, they are not. And they are definitely not even about food when it comes down to it. So, if you're turning to food, if you're thinking about food all the time, it is for a reason. And that reason often has to do with protecting us from other thoughts. If you're thinking about what you're eating, you're not thinking about what's eating at you. And often you may not even be aware of what's eating at you because you're so quick to go to food or think about food, you completely bypass the real problem, which are the thoughts and the feelings that you are trying to avoid. So if you're ready to take control of your thoughts and start living without constantly thinking about food, then you need to hear this. You need to hear what I'm going to talk about today. So let's talk about some situations and conflicts most of us want to avoid. Because if we're thinking about food, again, we're not thinking about what's eating at us. Food is a frenemy. Eating is a frenemy. It helps us in some way. It distracts us. Right? It comforts us. It soothes us. It fills a void. If we eat so much that we're in pain, physical pain, and you're thinking, I'm in physical pain. I can't have another bite. So why am I still eating? What's wrong with me? Logically, it doesn't make sense. Why would you eat when you are in distress if you're in physical pain? Psychologically, something is going on. Maybe you're in emotional pain, and unbeknownst to yourself, you are converting emotional pain to physical pain. It is easier to deal with physical pain than it is to deal with emotional pain. So I just want you to be curious about the why, because it's not about willpower, it's about why power. All right, so let's just talk about like some of these situations that often we want to avoid. Maybe talking to a friend or a family member about a sensitive issue, something that's bothering you, or looking at a mistake you made, or a regret that you have, or ending a toxic relationship or a toxic friendship. It's much easier to go like, I can't believe I ate the bread, than it is to think, oh, I don't think I can be friends with this person anymore. Stuff like that. Having a difficult conversation with someone, fear of public speaking, dealing with loss of any kind, the loss of a pet, the loss of a loved one, the loss of a job, the loss of something. Um, just navigating major life transitions, facing the fear of rejection, right? It is easier to go like, oh my God, I can't believe I ate the ice cream. What is wrong with me? Again, you hear the what is wrong with me all the time. Or I'm not going to eat ice cream. I'm going to go through the day. I'm going to be good. I'm going to plan out everything. I'm going to busily calculate everything that I'm having. Well, then you're thinking about that. Then you've got food on your mind. You've got calories and carbs and macros, and calories and carbs are macros, but well, carbs are macros. You got other stuff on your mind instead of what you really need to look at. It's easier to focus on food than it is to focus on what is bothering you. And this is why diets ultimately don't work. Diets don't work because they just tell you what to eat or not eat. They say eat this and not that, but they don't help you figure out why you are eating. All right, so I always like to give examples. So I'm going to give examples of people and how they're using food for distraction. If you are on Instagram and you have a question or you can relate to one of the examples that I am giving, please let me know. Or if you have a question about it, I am here. Let me know. All right, so, and again, all the names of all the people that I'm talking about, these are not their real names. So let's call this person Samantha. So Samantha really needed to confront her brother about how he was abusing prescription drugs. He got hurt on the job, and it's that typical story, right? Someone gets hurt, a doctor prescribes some opioids, and before you know it, the person's addicted, and that's why we have such a problem in our culture with drug addiction, but I digress. Okay. So she knew that she had to talk to her brother about this and really make a plan, because she could see that it was being very destructive to his life. But she was so worried about that. She didn't like confrontation. She felt bad about bringing something up to him. After all, he was dealing with the injury. He was trying his best, blah, blah, blah. Right? So what was she thinking about? Her own eating habits, her weight. She was criticizing herself for not having enough willpower to control her food and all of that, when really she was upset because her brother didn't have enough willpower, or it's more complicated than that. Her brother wasn't focusing his addiction to prescription drugs. So this is displacement. Instead of, oh my gosh, I'm really worried about my brother. I'm really upset with my brother. I have all kinds of mixed feelings about the fact that someone I love is dealing with this problem. It became, I can't believe I'm eating this. What's wrong with me? So displacing feelings about one relationship and situation onto herself for what she weighed. So she had to really look at what was eating at her, which is this relationship with her brother, and find new ways of getting better about conflict and about reframing how she thought about talking to him about this. She thought it was confrontation rather than help, assistance, things like that. So when she was able to look at the source of what was really bothering her, she stopped turning to food and thinking about food all the time, because it's not just the eating part, it's the thinking about it. And she started to notice that whenever she would start to think about, well, I'm going to talk to him, and I'm going to go over to his house, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to talk to him, she would distract her mind by going, oh my gosh, I just caught sight of myself in the mirror. Ugh. There you go. So she couldn't stop thinking about food all the time because she was trying not to think about her brother. Here's another one. Again, names have all been changed, and the situations have also been slightly changed. So Danielle who's a mom of two little kids, she was flirting with a coworker. Yes, she was. She had lunch with this person. She started thinking about this person all the time. And she had all these fantasies about like a different life with this person. But instead of thinking about that, she felt guilty about her weight. So her guilt over her attraction to her coworker got displaced onto her eating habits, onto her body image. And she found it easier to focus on that than it was to think about, oh my gosh, I'm married, I've got two kids. Why do I have feelings for this person? Yikes. As you can see, there's a lot eating at these people, but they weren't focusing on that. They were focusing on what they were eating and all the food thoughts. Then there's Emily and Jessica. Emily and Jessica have been friends for like, I don't know, since college, maybe 25 years, a long time. But Emily realized that this relationship did not serve her. Emily had grown and changed, and she no longer wanted to participate in the friendship, quote unquote, friendship, as it had been, because what she realized was she gave, she helped, she gave, she loaned money, she gave time, she gave assistance, she gave, and Jessica received. Jessica took and took and took and took. And it was not a friendship of mutuality. It was a friendship of Emily gave and Jessica took. And this was really upsetting to her. So as soon as she realized, oh, this is not working. This is actually not working for me. This is this best friend of mine since college. It's not good. She makes me feel bad, and I don't think she can change because this is kind of who she is. She does this with all the people in her life. I think I've she said, I think I've got to make some changes. And this scared the heck out of her. It really scared her because this person had been her best friend since college for 25 years. And now she realizes, wow, I don't think I can be friends with someone who just takes from me, who just is so self-absorbed and self-centered and who just wants to drain me. And no sooner did Emily realize that than she said, you know what? But actually, what really bothers me even more than this is I got on the scale this morning and I couldn't believe the number that I saw. This is not okay. I am not okay with this. No, what she was not okay with was Jessica being such a taker. That's what she was not okay with. But rather than go, my best friend Jessica is kind of a bitch to me and draining me and sucking the life out of me, and I resent her and I'm upset. No, it became, oh, this is not okay. My weight is not okay. Again, displacement. So if you're listening on Instagram, does this resonate with you in your life? Let me know. Because when you can identify what it is that you're trying not to think about, and that's why you're thinking about food all the time or obsessed with your weight or busy, counting macros or just thinking about it all the time. When I know it's hard, but once you realize what it is you're trying not to think about and you deal with it, then everything changes. So when Emily realized, oh no, what was really unacceptable was not her weight, it was what was weighing on her, which is this uneven relationship. She was able to actually distance herself from her friend. With some people, you can't say to them, hey, look, you're sucking the life out of me. It's all about you. This is not okay with me. When you always make it about you, I feel really bad because it means that you're not as good a friend to me as I am to you. With some people, you could try to have that conversation. And she did in a way, But sometimes having the conversation doesn't work because the person's not reasonable. And if the person's not reasonable, then they can't respond to you, right? So then you've got to take action. Okay. On Instagram, fear of gaining weight back. All right. So what's occupying your mind is that you're afraid of gaining weight back. So can you dig a little deeper? And what else, which I understand that is a legitimate concern. I totally get it. So I'm not disputing that I'm not saying, well, that's not a real thing. Of course it is. But what other fears might you have if you can bravely look at if you weren't afraid of gaining your weight back, or if you were, but it was manageable, what other anxieties are in your life? I don't have it with me, but I have my magic wand that I have been told works slowly. But if it worked right away and I could say, okay, I'm taking all thoughts of your fear of gaining weight back from your mind, what else are you afraid of? What other anxieties might be in your head? And that's where you want to be curious, because thoughts about food, thoughts about weight, these kinds of fears, they distract you from other things. So let me keep going, and you think about that. And if you feel safe, trust the universe. Let me know or share with us. So then there's Mark, who really felt upset about the lack of emotional and physical intimacy with his wife. And so he became overly focused on trying to get as fit as possible, thinking, well, maybe she'd be attracted to him if he were fitter, if he had bigger muscles and less of a tummy, all of those things. And he was constantly criticizing himself for not being disciplined enough, not hitting the gym hard enough, not doing all the things. And as long as he was thinking about that and beating himself up for that, guess what he wasn't thinking about? That he felt distanced from his wife, that it didn't matter how fit he got, that there was something wrong in the relationship that he didn't want to look at, or that there was distance between them. And it was easier for him to hit it hard in the gym than it was to think about the distance that he felt in his relationship with his wife. And then here's another one. Priya had a terror of public speaking. And she, because of her job, she was required to sometimes do public speaking. So she had to do this conference. And instead of working through her fear of public speaking, she started saying, well, I just need to lose weight, because then if I lose weight, then when I'm speaking, people are going to listen to me more, or they're not going to be judging me. Now, what she was doing was she was kind of projecting her own thoughts about her weight onto people that she was speaking to. So, and if you're a longtime listener to the show, you've probably heard me talk about the singer that I helped, who thought that everyone was looking at her, thinking she looked big and she didn't sound as good as she did on Spotify and all the things. And that's because she was projecting her own critical thoughts about herself into the audience and back at her. So she thought that she was too big. She thought she didn't sound good enough. She thought all of these terrible things about her. So when she went, she had a terrible fear of terrible stage fright, because she would get on stage and she would think that the audience was thinking all the terrible things that she thought about herself. So what did we do? We worked on her relationship with herself. We turned her critic into a friend. She learned how to support herself with words instead of use food to sedate herself or distract or comfort herself. She learned new ways of coping, and she learned new ways of seeing herself. So what happened was, when she finally went on tour, yay! And she called me. This was the most awesome thing. She called me and she tells me that she thinks different people are coming to her show. She's like, I think new people have discovered my music. No, the same people were coming to her show. It's just that she was now projecting her positive self-view into them back at her. And that shows how important our relationship with ourselves is when it comes to our relationships with the world and, of course, with food. So, just like Priya, who had this terrible stage fright, fear of public speaking, it was really easier for her to focus on, dieting and preparing to be as thin as possible for this public speaking engagement at the conference than it was for her to look at her own harsh relationship with herself, her harsh expectations. She had some unconscious idea that if she actually just lost weight, she would lose all the things she didn't like about herself. And that's because the diet industry sells us that illusion. If you just lose weight, you will be a different person. You will be your best self. You will change. If you're shy, you'll lose weight and become confident. You'll be able to public speak, no problem. Instead of looking at, well, what is it that's making you think you're not good enough, not enough, or too much? It's harder to focus on that. It's harder to look at what's eating at you. It is easier to think about what you're eating. So Priya was just preoccupied with what she was eating instead of focusing on why did she think that she was going to be scrutinized in this way? Why does she always think that people are going to look at her like, that's not good enough, you made a mistake? Well, as you can probably guess, the answer to that lies in, as she was growing up, what did she experience? I bet you can guess. No matter what she did, nothing was ever good enough. So she had this audience of her family, and they were always like, could have done better. What? Or even about her appearance. Why did you choose that to wear? So she was constantly being scrutinized, constantly being watched. And then she imagined that the world is watching her. And you know what? If you're just in a room with ice cream or pizza or whatever your bad food is, no one's watching you. It's just you and food. And it was her escape rather than learning to process how she felt about her family and recognizing how she'd brought that into her current situation. Even though she had moved thousands of miles away from her family, she brought them with her in her head because she thought that people were thinking the same things that her family had thought of her, even strangers. And good news, once she resolved this, guess what? She has no problem with public speaking, which is good because her job entails a lot of that. Another example, Rachel was raised in a very, very hyper-conservative religious way. Very, very, very conservative. And she did not want to live that way. She did not believe in the way that the religion believed. And this was what was really weighing on her. If you're joining late, we're talking about how to stop thinking about food 24/7. And what I'm letting you guys know is that if you're thinking about food, you're not thinking about something else. If you're focusing on what you are eating, you are not thinking about what is eating at you. And so I'm giving examples of the different ways in which certain people who I've helped, who I am presenting in a very disguised way, because as a licensed clinician, I'm supposed to do that. I have to protect everyone, as examples. And if there's something that you can relate to or a question that you have, feel free to ask me, because today is also the first Thursday of the month when I answer your questions. It doesn't even have to be on this topic. Any question you have regarding food, weight, or body image. So I'm talking about Rachel, who was raised in this conservative religious community, and she had this terrible dilemma. To be true to herself, she had to give up the community because it's one of those communities where it's either you're with us or you're not. And if you're not with us, you're cast out. So to be true to herself, she had to give up the community to give to keep the community and stay with those connections and all of that she lived with all her life. She had to basically give up herself. What a terrible dilemma. This is what was eating at her. So instead of her processing this and working through this, which of course is very difficult. There's no easy answer. It's really hard. She really focused on what she was eating. So she, as long as she was focusing on her weight and kind of saying, well, maybe I'll think about this when I drop those last 30 pounds. Maybe I'll think about this sometime later. And in the meantime, when I say think about this, leaving the community. So every moment of every day, she's thinking about, what did I eat? How much? Am I going to gain weight? Am I going to lose weight? Just constantly thinking about numbers. And this kept her from the deeper thought of what was weighing on her, what was eating at her, which is this dilemma she faced. Should she stay with the community that she'd been raised in, but lose herself? Or did she follow her own heart and give up this community? It was really tough. But ultimately, we cannot distract from what is bothering us. We can't distract forever by constantly thinking about food. It is hard. It takes bravery. But when you focus on why you are eating instead of focusing on what you are eating, not only will things with food change, but you'll also stop thinking about it all the time. Remember, binge eating, stress eating, any kind of emotional eating, it is a frenemy. It does something for you. It distracts you, which is what I'm talking about today. It comforts you. It helps you cope in some way. It fills a void. It expresses anger, all kinds of things. But it also, of course, hurts you because it hurts your self-esteem and your body and your peace of mind. So I am going to take a short break. If you're on Instagram, stay with me. I'm going to take a short break and I will be back in 2 minutes. I'll see you then.
All clear. Back in 2.
Thanks, Jordan. Okay, Instagram people, I'm all yours for 2 minutes. Heather, yes, it's good that you want to get back to real food. So what do you think is stopping you from so she's saying she's lost 22 pounds on a plan with prepackaged meals. You want to get off of that, good plan, because that would be healthier, and get back to real food. What is it that's stopping you from doing that? If you feel like you can, maybe you don't feel comfortable sharing. Again, sometimes she's not sure the types of food. I'd say that focusing on food and trying to eat low-cal just is just diet mentality, and it keeps the focus on what you are eating, and it's all about deprivation. And sorry, but deprivation there's always leads to overeating or binge eating. If you tell yourself you can't have something and you're constantly trying to eat low-cal this or that, then you are deprived, you are restricted in some way, and then you just want the thing that you cannot have. Eventually your willpower fails, right? And then you end up eating all the things, swearing to start your diet tomorrow, rinse and repeat. And that is why learning to become an intuitive eater is so important.
Coming back at 15.
But before you can become an intuitive eater, you really need to look at why you're turning to food, not focusing on what you're eating. And we're back in a second.
Welcome back to the Binge Cure with Dr. Nina. Have questions for Dr. Nina? Join her on the show at 866-472-5792. That's 866-472-5792. Now back to the show.
Welcome back to the Binge Cure with Dr. Nina. Today we are talking about how to stop thinking about food 24/7. Oh, it's the worst, isn't it? When it's just occupies your mind from the moment you get up to the moment you go to bed. So one of the things I've been talking about so far is how thinking about food all the time, as well as eating it, binging, emotional eating, is a way of distracting from other things. I'm going to share just one more, and then we'll move on to managing food cravings, because that's another question I got, which was, well, how do I manage my food cravings? So, just last example is Hannah, who really loves being photography and wants to become a photographer. But she has a very stable career as an accountant. Yawn for her. I'm sure many accountants are very happy with being accountants, but Hannah was not happy with being an accountant. She was actually a creative person who became an accountant because it was a safe job. And that's what her parents told her when she went to college. Be sure to get a major in something that you can have a safe job. So she had a safe job, but at the expense of her creative self. And sometimes when you don't have enough fulfillment in your life, that can also be displaced onto food. You can't just, go from being an accountant to being a professional photographer, like boom. You can't just have more of what you want out of life. If you're single and you want to have a partner, you can't just boom, order one on Amazon, although wouldn't that be amazing? Gosh, it would make life so much easier. Anyway, not in the world we live in. You can't have more of what you want, but you can always have more food. And that's why it's really important to look at, well, what do you want more of? Hannah wanted more satisfaction and fulfillment in her career. She couldn't get it. So guess what? She got satisfaction and literal fulfillment out of food. And it was when we looked at how she was using it as a way of filling a void in her life and distracting herself from what she really wanted, what she was really hungry for, was a satisfying, fulfilling life. So she couldn't get it. She's eating food. And again, this is not conscious. No one is sitting there going, I think I will eat as a way of coping with my conflict between following my passion and choosing financial stability. Nobody thinks that. Nobody's aware of that, but it's just automatic. When you can become more aware of what is eating at you, then you can deal with it yourself. It directly. It's like the weed and the root, right? If we just pluck a weed, it will grow back. You know that. You don't have to be a gardener to know that. And that is because there is something underneath. There's something below the surface in the ground that is the roots that are growing those weeds. The same with our emotions. There is something under the surface, in our unconscious, hidden from us. We're in the dark about it, but it has so much to do with why we are turning to food or thinking about it all the time. And when you can get super curious about what that is, and then you can dig out those roots, and then they're gone for good. No more weed. That's when emotional eating or binge eating is in your rear view mirror and it becomes the thing that you used to do. But you don't do that anymore. No big deal. Yeah, I used to do that. I don't do that anymore. And I don't have to think about it every day. That's why, by the way, I don't believe in recovery. Recovery to me means I'm going to wake up every day and I'm going to make a meal plan and I'm going to tell myself that I can do this and I'm going to be good and all the things. That sounds terrible to me. Who wants to white knuckle it and not have food you like? Liberation means I'm going to wake up and think about my day, not my diet, and I'm going to create I have food neutrality. All foods are just foods. I can choose to eat it or not eat it. I can have, if I want some ice cream, I'll have some ice cream. And when you know you could have ice cream all the time, chances are you're going to decide sometimes, I don't really feel like ice cream. And most of all, you're not going to think about it all the time because you're going to be living your life and thinking about your life and not the things, not using food to distract you from your life. Okay, so how do you get to those roots? We're so good at turning to food to avoid our conflicts and our emotions and the things that we don't want to look at. Then how do we figure it out? So that's why I came up with my food mood formula. And I discovered it took me like 10 years to come up with this formula. Because in the first 10 years of treating people with eating disorders, I have exclusively treated people with eating disorders with one exception, but her daughter had an eating disorder. So I started noticing that there were patterns. When people wanted smooth, creamy food like ice cream, that what they really wanted was comfort. What they were really craving was comfort. When they were eating filling foods, like bread, cake, muffins, pizza, pasta, burgers, things that take up space within us, really, those foods are correlated with filling some kind of void, loneliness, emptiness, something missing from your life, someone missing from your life. And so if those are the foods that are your go-to, you want to look at, what are the holes in your life and how else can you fill them other than symbolically with food? Anything with a crunch, chips, pretzels, crackers, all the things like that make us crunch down with our teeth, our jaws, those are associated with forms of anger. And what I hear from many women is, oh, well, I'm not an angry person. No, you're a person who's angry, and it is just a reaction to a situation. And they'll say, I'm not angry, I'm just a little frustrated. Frustration is a form of anger. Frustration, annoyance, irritation, rage, these are all forms of anger. So if crunchy foods are your go-to, then you want to look at how you can express your anger in healthy ways that don't involve eating. And that you can use this formula to really get to those roots. By the way, when it comes to chocolate fits the formula. Some people like those creamy chocolates with the creamy centers. That fits creamy. Or crunchy, dark chocolate with nuts. That's crunchy, that's anger. So use the formula and just start to think, what's really on my mind? And even if you're like, well, I'm not aware that I'm frustrated, just ask yourself, okay, but what if I were? What might I be frustrated with? If I'm not mad at myself for eating, who or what is upsetting me? As for non-chocolate sweets, consider that you might need more sweetness in your life. The sweetness of fulfillment, the sweetness of connection, the sweetness of love. So maybe there's something going on in your life that you are missing. Look at it. Be curious, not critical. Because when we're curious, we find answers. When we're curious, we're able to recognize what is the root issue that's causing me to focus on food, to think about food, to just be tunnel vision all about food. If you couldn't think about food, what would be on your mind? And if you are emotional eating or binge eating, why? Is it because you are deprived? Heather, pay attention. No, because one reason for binging is when you're dieting or when you're not eating enough. But this is not the emotional side of binging. This is a physical side of binging. When you don't eat enough during the day, and at night you're just ravenous and you're just so hungry, you eat the kitchen, right? That's one reason for binging. But Heather, what I was going to say is another way of being deprived is when you are dieting, and all diets are eat this but not that. Eat this but not that. And if you are in a place where you are eating this but not that, sooner or later you're going to want the that. You're going to want the thing that you can't have. And then if you have diet mentality, black and white thinking, so let's just use ice cream as an example. You're not supposed to eat ice cream because it's not on the diet. So you eat ice cream, and then diet mentality says, oh, well, now I've blown it. I've blown the whole day. The day is ruined. I might as well also have the cookies, the cheese, whatever it is that you're not allowing yourself to have. I might as well have the toast and the this and the that. And before you know it, you have binged and demolished the kitchen, all because of dieting and diet mentality, which is that black and white thinking. Yeah. So Heather, let's aim for, and everyone else who's listening, Heather just happens to be here on Instagram. Let's aim for food neutrality. You are not good if you choose carrots, and bad if you choose chips. Food neutrality is all foods are neutral. And when you truly know that you can have any food, you're a lot more likely, and it takes time, it does take time, you're a lot more likely to choose the foods that are healthy for you than you are to eat the foods that are forbidden. So that's one reason for binging, restriction. The diet binge cycle, it is a thing. It is a real thing. And diets are just not a long-term solution for your physical or emotional health. Another reason is eating for the wrong reasons. Like you're really tired and you're eating chocolate for energy. So, and then of course that you get the sugar spike, and then you get tired again, and you keep eating chocolate for energy. So in that case, you're eating to give yourself energy, but what you really need is rest. Or the opposite, when you're really anxious, and when you're anxious, you're just like jittery, and it's like you've had 10 cups of coffee, which I have personally had 10 cups of coffee, I'm ashamed to say. So I know the jittery feeling that comes from that, like, ah. And then maybe you're eating foods to sedate yourself. A lot of carby foods that you might be eating to sedate yourself and your body, instead of other ways to calm yourself, other ways to calm your body. And then, of course, the last reason for binge eating is actually the biggest reason, and that is to resolve something emotional. As you could see in my examples of everyone that I talked about today, they were using food to avoid, to distract, or to fill a void, to fill an emptiness, all these different reasons. And we get so good at turning to food, we don't even realize that we're being triggered, or we eat so that we don't think about the thing we don't want to think about. But when you have new strategies to cope, to be with yourself, to validate, acknowledge, support, reassure, encourage yourself, guess what? You stop using food to distract yourself. You stop thinking about food all the time to distract yourself. So to summarize, think about why you're eating instead of what you are eating. And so here are some things that you can do, kind of practical things that you can do to change your relationship with food and yourself. One is really challenge the food rules. Let go of the idea that certain foods are bad and certain foods are good, because what that turns into is, oh, I was good, feeling so virtuous because you ate a salad, or I was bad because I had a sandwich. No, you are not bad if you ate a sandwich. You're a person who ate a sandwich. But if you feel bad because you ate a sandwich, now you feel bad. Now you feel bad about yourself. Now your day is diminished. Now your self-esteem is getting eroded. This puts too much focus on food to dictate how you feel about you. Give yourself permission to eat all the foods. I know this sounds like that's impossible. But instead, just give yourself permission. Just try it for one day. And giving yourself permission does not mean having all of it. It just means having some of it. If you give yourself permission to have it, you will actually like it more. If you're eating something and feeling guilty, we don't even enjoy it as much. It's like that guilty eating, and then you just have another little slice or another little piece, and you feel guilty and awful, and you're not even enjoying it. The point is, food is supposed to be enjoyed. That is why my one food rule is it has to be yummy. So when I was raising my girls, my 16-year-old daughter, she would probably be horrified that I'm talking about this, but she doesn't like it when I talk about her. Oh, well, I'm talking about her anyway. So I would say, do you want, I would give them options. Do you want an apple and peanut butter, or do you want some cookies? Do you want some hummus and carrots and celery, or do you want some ice cream? So I would give her two different options. One was, super healthy, and one was not. And guess what? Because she knew she could always have the whatever, she was living in the land of food neutrality, she often chose the healthy food. And I have talked many times about the experience on Halloween when she had a huge pillowcase full of food, full of candy. And she's like, I'm hungry. And my husband said, well, have some candy. And she said, no, Dad, I want some real food. Oh, yes. Why? She could have candy anytime. And her friend, who was not allowed to eat candy, was shoving candy in her mouth, binging on candy all night. This is something that you can really practice and get better at when you focus more on why you are eating. Give yourself permission to eat anything. It takes time, but it is doable. So challenge those food rules, and really look at the underlying triggers. When you identify the underlying emotions, stressors, needs, all of those things, conflicts that might be driving those food cravings or binge eating or thinking about it all the time, then you know what the real root is. And by addressing that directly, rather than turning to food as a coping strategy, then you feel better. You deal with the situation and you don't use food to cope or thoughts of food to cope, and life is better and happier. Again, practice makes progress. If you've been using food to distract your mind for decades, and almost everyone that I see and help has been struggling for decades, 10, 20, 30, 40, even 50 years. It takes a little bit of time to change that, but often they've been focused on the wrong thing, which is they've been focused on what they are eating, thinking that if they just go on the right diet, they won't binge. No, they're setting themselves up to binge. Instead, they've got to look at why they are binging, why they are emotional eating, why they're thinking about food all the time, rather than focusing on food. It is a distraction. And while you're doing this, it's so important to be really self-compassionate, being kind and understanding to yourself. Otherwise, you're going to make yourself feel bad, and then you're going to use food to cope because now you feel bad. You're going to get away from your own mean voice by using food. So often people will say, oh, I'm so mad at myself. I can't believe I ate that. I have no willpower, I have no self-control. I'm disgusting. I'm disgusted with myself. I hate myself. Things like that. Does that sound familiar? Have you ever said anything like that to yourself? If yes, give me some kind of an emoji if you've been mean to yourself in that way. If you have been horrible and hateful to yourself. Well, if a friend had a binge, would you say to that friend, "Oh my God, I can't believe you ate that. You are disgusting. I am disgusted by you. I can't even stand to look at you in the mirror. I can't even stand to look at you." No, you would never, ever, ever say that. Never. So why do you talk to yourself that way? That is why it is so important to be that friend to yourself. Turn your critic into a friend. If you would not say it to somebody else, do not say it to yourself. You can either support yourself and encourage yourself and validate yourself and be kind to yourself and soothe yourself with words, or you can, and then you don't need food. Or you could be mean to yourself, make yourself feel bad, and then boom, it's in the kitchen to block out the mean voice. Again, practice makes progress. So that's what I want you to really think about. Just think about why am I eating? What problem is this resolving? Or what problem is this distracting me from? What do I feel about it? And then express it. Work through it with words to a friend, to a therapist. Use the Binge Cure journal, guided workbook. Highly recommend it. I wrote it for everyone who has listened to this podcast and my previous show on LA Talk Radio and said, "Well, how do I do that? I can't see you. So how can I can't, how do I do that?" I wrote I did the journal for that. So I want you to know that it is possible when you identify why you're eating instead of focusing on what you're eating, when you express yourself and when you respond to yourself in a kind, loving, generous way, everything changes. Then you're coping with words instead of with food. So I hope this has illuminated why you may be thinking about food 24/7 and given you some strategies to change. And thank you so much for joining me here on the Binge Cure with Dr. Nina. I am here every Thursday at noon Pacific here on Voice America and also on Instagram for the live stream. For a deeper dive into this topic, be sure to get my book, The Binge Cure, 7 Steps to Outsmart Emotional Eating. It is available on Amazon in all formats, including Audible, if you want me to read it to you. So stay curious, not critical. I will see you next week. Bye for now.
All clear. Decent show.
A decent show.
I decided to do it.
Thank you, Jordan.
No problem.
Have a great
Hope you
week.
Have a great rest of your day. You too.
Bye.